Assalamu alaikum. This is Ahmed Abdullah with another episode of Deenversation. Today I have a very special guest with me, Abdullah Al-Andalusi. Your reputation precedes you, and so I don't think we're going to be needing much of an introduction. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing fine, alhamdulillah. I'm enjoying the very, very garam weather with humidity here as the monsoon started.
Yeah, that's great. So I've brought you on here today to ask you some questions about Islam, and you're a very public, prominent Muslim speaker, and I understand that you've had previous conversations with atheists in the region, so I hope you don't mind if I go on more of that direction.
Sure.
So my first question to you would be, how would you say that the existence of God through Islam can be justified?
Well, I mean, if we say through Islam, the Quran says like in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, these are signs for those who reflect or those who are understanding. So in this, the Quran is pointing the creations of the heaven and the earth, heavens, space. So this is space. And in the alternation of night and day, time. So space and time, if you think about them, bear witness to the creator of the universe, the necessity of the creator of the universe. And it can go simple like this, really. Now, the Quran tells you to observe, but interestingly, the Quran doesn't make an argument, doesn't say, right, now here's how the argument's going to go. It says, you observe these things, and if you use your intellect, you'll see the evidence of this. So, that's what we do.
But does this mean that every single person who's an intellectual and who comes to a conclusion other than Islam, does that negate their intellect?
No, it shows that they've made an assumption that prevents them from seeing, from answering the question. So, just to give a simple example. So, okay, let's take alternation of night and day. So, time. How does time prove God's existence? Well, this moment exists only because it depends on a prior moment of existence.
Exactly.
And this moment only exists because it depends on a prior moment, and that on a prior moment, and that on a prior moment. If, let's say, you were to assume that there's an eternity in the past of moments leading up to this point, people say the person who might be intellectual will say, I don't see a problem with this. I mean, there was an eternity past of different moments. It could be this universe, then maybe a previous one and a previous one that produced the Big Bang, whatever. And there's a big chain of universes, or this universe has always been the same way it was, but it's been changing over time. But it's one universe. Whatever speculation you want to say, let's go with that. The reason why they don't notice there's a problem with that thinking is because they just simply use the word eternity and they haven't defined what the word eternity means. Eternity means endless, right?
Yeah.
Or infinite, which
exactly,
comes from the Latin word infinis, meaning not finishing. So finish is from finis.
No end.
Yeah, no end. Okay, so then to get to this moment in time, if I said to you, I'll give you a good argument for proving God's existence. Just wait an infinite amount of time, and then I'll tell you.
Exactly.
So will I ever be able to then tell you?
Yeah.
Will I ever get to the point of the argument? No. So to reach this moment of time, if we rely on an infinite or unending series of things to end,
then we never get to the present day.
Or to an unfinishing series of things to finish, to reach here, we would never get to. So it's an actual contradiction.
Yeah. It's infinite regress. I get what you're trying to say.
Infinite regress. But I'm trying to put it simply without using these big terms.
Exactly,
right?
exactly, yeah.
So then is the start point, that's for the universe, and the question is, what's behind that start
But I do have to ask you, that's in the existence of God. Now, what says that this God and the idea of an Islamic God who is justice and who has a balance in the universe, how do you co-define both of these things? Because we could say that there's a Christian God, or there's a kind of God that someone like Carl Sagan believed in, that he believed that there was a God, but that this God is cruel and he doesn't care about us. What separates this kind of God? And
so that's a different thing. Technically, you didn't question me on, well, there's a start point, but how do you know, why does that prove God? Right? So that's what some of you would say. And I'll put it very simply and short and briefly, which is, if there was a first moment, if every moment in time depends on a previous moment in time, the first moment in time, what does that depend on, right? So if you say, well, it's just a moment in time and it created they put the next moment in time, and there's nothing before it, well, then it's not a moment in time. Then it's not part of time. It creates.
It's
time.
something outside of time.
Yeah, then it's outside of time, and then the question is, what is making it make time, make space, make universe? Well, if you say there's something behind it that's pushing it to do so, then it's not the first thing. If you're saying that there's something inside it that's making it move like a factory, like a clock, then technically it's not the first thing. It's whatever's inside it is the first thing. That's
so why is this starting thing? Why does it have to be conscious? Why does it have to be?
Because the only answer that's left, if there's no internal mechanism and there's no external mechanism that's pushing this thing to make universes, because it is the absolute first thing. There's nothing
before
within,
it. There's nothing driving
before it or underneath it or within it.
Exactly.
You could say more fundamental than it, should we say? Then the only thing that's left is if it's not compelled, and it does it, what is the answer? If something does something,
What's driving it?
Without any internal or external compulsion, what's the only possibility left?
You could say a conscious system. A conscious
No, I don't even need to talk about consciousness, because that's too much assumed for like humans are conscious.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Choice.
Choice. So
It
there has to
chooses
be.
it.
Okay.
Irada in Arabic, and also
exactly.
Urdu. It has a will. Okay, and then does it know when it chooses something? Does it know what it's choosing? Well, to make a choice, you have to know what you're choosing, and you have to choose something from a list of possibilities. And so it would then have foreknowledge. It would know what it's making before it's making it, because it has to make. If you're making it from nothing, you have to literally define it into existence. So you have to know what you're defining, and therefore you have to have knowledge. And of course, the last point is, if you can make one thing from nothing, you can, if I said, I don't have many money, but I can make gold coins appear in my hand from absolute nothing with no energy required, because that would be something. So from absolute nothing, if I could make one gold coin appear in my hand, how much wealth do I have? Unlimited.
Unlimited.
I don't have to make unlimited
You don't
coins
have
either.
Yeah.
So this thing has infinite power. It has the ability to choose. So it has a will, and it has knowledge. And it was the first thing, so it was uncreated and therefore independent.
Great. So we're talking about a creator.
That's God.
That's a creator that can make a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
By your definition. But again, I do have to ask you, how does this link into the Islamic God? Because I could concede this point with you and go halfway and say I'm agnostic, and I do think that there is a God. What takes me from that agnostic to being a Muslim, and what makes this God that we don't know about to something that we do know about, to the Quran and to the Sunnah?
Okay. Well, long story short, and this is really condensed. So basically the question is, why would the Creator make the universe in the first place? And these are just observations we're going to make before we open the book of the Quran and just say, here's what observations we can make. So the Creator makes the universe. What fundamentally is if He intends it, so He's intending everything in this universe to exist. And everything that will exist, because He creates both time and space. So He's not limited, like only the first moment. He makes all the moments. So, okay, what's the first thing the universe proves? Right. Usually I would ask the other person and get them to realize that would take a longer period of time.
Exactly.
So I'll jump to it. This universe shows that is an expression of His ability to create. Therefore, this universe is literally the purpose or the intent of this universe is to be a sign of the Creator. Basically, this like you see if you watch a movie or you watch. You see a piece of art on the wall. These things are expressions of the artist.
Of the artist, of the director.
It's expressing the artist's will.
Yeah.
So everything here is an expression of the Creator's ability to create and His existence.
Okay.
So everything has that purpose because that's what it is.
Okay.
That's what
but
it
we
does.
see this kind of reasoning in Abrahamic religions. We see this kind of reasoning in Christianity itself.
Yes.
What separates this reasoning?
Not in Hindu. Mainstream Hinduism says that God made the universe for a joke.
Yeah, no, not really.
Or for sport.
Yeah, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But again, what separates this argument from the crowd?
Well, so once everything in the universe is made, the purpose of it is to be, in a sense, it points to the Creator and it points to His ability to create. And every type of matter and every type of thing, from things which are living and things which are more complicated living things, us, our consciousness, our will, and our knowledge, all these things are also having the same purpose. It's to point towards the Creator. Hence, the Creator expects from knowledgeable things that they must gain knowledge of Him. Things that are conscious, that they must bear witness to Him and His creation. And for those that have will, that they use their will to bear witness to Him. And
something like this panpsychism of creation, you could say. So that all creation points back to an ultimate creator.
Not panpsychism, because the atoms of the universe, the planets, the stars, don't have to be conscious.
Yeah.
Their existence points towards the creator. That's it, right?
Sure.
But with things that do have consciousness, this consciousness also has to be is pointing towards the creator, and it does so in its way, which is to bear witness to His creation and to bear witness to the creator, because we have the ability to detect God's existence by intellectual reasoning.
Sure.
So the intellect bears witness to the creator.
Sure, great. And that's for a generalization of God. How would you tie this into Islam now? Because I've heard this a lot, and these arguments, and we've never actually tied this into Islam before in this kind of way. So
sure. So then what we would say is that if the creator intends a knowledge-creating organism in this universe who has consciousness, to come to knowledge of Him and to basically have a will, this requires the ability to make choices. So they have to make choices between different ways.
Yeah.
But if they're meant to choose the creator over alternative choices, then you have to be given the means. Okay, then what is the choosing the creator? Well, to know that, I have to know what is the right choice to make, i.e., good and bad. And to know good and bad, well, we weren't born with an instruction manual, and it's not inscribed. While we might have tendencies, we want to do things for things greater than ourselves. This is a tendency. You might call it the fitter.
Altruism, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, yes, but how do we direct it? Like, because it's very confusing. Humans are very complex creatures.
Sure,
We're not born with an innate, detailed knowledge
Moral
of our
compass,
law.
yeah.
So how do we live? What do we do? So we would expect the creator to communicate to us, and we can call this revelation. And communicate in an intelligible way. So it would be that we would have this knowledge, but it can't be a way that would compel us. So you can't beam it directly into our heads, because then we wouldn't have any choice other than to accept it and recognize His existence. So it has to come in the form of the prophet. So it has to come in the form of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the God,
The prophet.
Selecting human individuals to be the intermediary of the communication. So to say, they would get the communication, and then they would offer it and teach to the people, and then the people could choose to accept or reject that communication. And that communication would detail how they would live every aspect of their life, in order for them to be able to actually have the free will to make the choices, good or bad. So you can only have free will once you are given knowledge of good and bad. So once we come all this, and we know that the creator is one, He's the first thing, He's not multiple things. If there was multiple things, then they would be limited, and they wouldn't be the unlimited creator, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, since the creator has control over all things, and if there's not a God, they would have control over each other. But then
you're talking about something like Greek, yeah.
I
get what you're saying.
So there's going to be one God. So then we have this criteria of now. Okay, now I know this criteria. I'm gonna compare it to every religion I could find, every claimed revelation or legacy of revelation I can find, and say, is this true revelation, and is this accurately preserved old revelation, right? Yeah. So what can we find? So we look at Christianity. We know that their doctrines got corrupted by Greek mythology, and so they believe that God is actually three gods, three different persons, three different wills.
Three different wills. Yeah.
So that's discounted. Judaism could have been a viable candidate, because it seems to have prophets and laws and so on, but it seems like it's time bound to a very specific tribe of people, and we don't know how well the text has been preserved, because there are certain things that there are certain contradictions that we see in their text.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Abraham is told to sacrifice his only begotten son, and his first son was Ismail. But then the text later on says the son that was going to be offered to be sacrificed was Ishaq, and then that son was saved from sacrifice. But there's wait, there's a contradiction there, because his first only begotten son at that time was the only time he ever had an only son was when it was Ismail, right?
Yeah.
So and that's just, I'm just picking one tiny one, but there's many. But again, that gets discounted as because it might have been viable revelation at one point, but it has now been corrupted by human hands. The books, the most important one, the most interesting one was, there was in the 5 books of Moses, allegedly books written by Moses, it says, and then Moses died and was buried, and to this day no one knows where he was buried. That doesn't sound like Moses wrote that.
That sounds like somebody else.
Well, wait, he's died, he was buried, and to this day no one knows where he was buried. Moses wrote that?
Yeah.
About himself? What, to this day? But he's still alive. So anyway, when he wrote it, so it's like it could have been original revelation, but we don't know, it's no longer accurate. So what's left? Well, we have the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came with a deen. He said that it was revealed to him from the angel Jibreel, from God, for mankind. And we say, okay, now let's check this. What does it say about the universe? Well, the Quran says that everything in the universe is an ayat of Allah. It's the evidence of Him. It says that everything was made and everything glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that He didn't make the man or the jinn, another race alongside us, except to worship Him. So we start to see that it gives a sharia, a detailed sharia that talks about every aspect of life's existence, not just, okay, you're a believer once a week when you pray in the mosque or pray in the church, and that's when it matters, or maybe okay, just be nice and to people, but I'll let you define how that is yourself. No, it gives you detailed guidance.
So Islam makes more sense because it's more structured, is what you're trying to say?
I'm saying that a structured, detailed and systematic guidance to allow us to navigate the complexities of human interaction societies is exactly what you would expect from a revelation from the creator of the universe. And if it's the only one that's like that, and it seems to be, there's no contradiction in the Quran. The Quran says, had this been from any other one other than Allah, you would have found
Are you talking about scientific
many
contradictions?
Any type of contradiction, internal as well as external. Does it contradict what you observe from reality? So I don't know, you have this game called Guess Who in here, right? You have different like all these
characters,
these characters, and someone picks your opponent or your person that you're playing
by
against,
method of
picks a
elimination,
card, and you have to eliminate to guess which character is in his card that he randomly picked, and then if you guess it before he guesses yours, you win the game. So by process of elimination, Islam is the only one standing, and it totally agrees with all the rational observations that we made, that there can only be one God. God is not a division of different persons or different wills, that no human can be worshipped, nothing created can be worshipped, only the creator of the universe. That both the time and space is an evidence of the creator. The Quran says the same thing. All this stuff, the Quran is in complete concordance with both what we can rationally
What about
observe.
when you see scientific contradictions in the Quran? So, for example, a verse that says that semen comes from the backbone, or another verse that says that the body, the ears and the eyes are created, that the ears and the eyes were created on the 42nd day of conceivance. What do you think about these?
So where in the Quran?
In the Quran, about semen.
No, I mean the other one. Eyes and ears.
That was from the Hadith.
Okay.
That was from the Hadith. That was from Sahih Bukhari.
Okay, so in the issue of the Quran, so it actually says between the backbones and the ribs.
It
doesn't
between
say
the backbone and the ribs.
in the backbones.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Between the
And it didn't say semen. See, this is one of the problems is that Muslims assume. So basically, when it's semen, they think they mean particular sperm. Usually they say sperm.
But they're talking about the ejaculate liquid, and
it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
And the last thing that this liquid, which actually comes from literally, if you actually draw a line between the highest point in the backbone and the lowest point of the ribs, if you actually draw a line, it's actually dead center between them. Where the ejaculate fluid actually begins its journey. So it's from there, and then it goes, and along the way it picks up sperm, and then it becomes the full thing. So,
but isn't the word for it khuluf? I think, if I'm not wrong, the ejaculate liquid that's described in the Quran.
Yes, but I'm talking about the English. When people sometimes make the mistake of saying, or sperm comes from the backbone of the ribs. No, it's not the sperm. It talks about the ejaculate liquid. The whole thing starts its journey from between the backbone and the ribs. So there's this, although you might say that these between the backbone and ribs is you could, if you're looking at it from basically just the angle of, well, it's basically it's at the lower part of your body, and it's all this is between the backbone and the ribs. You could say that it could be the verse is referring to the whole lower half of your torso.
That's being a bit. I think that's stretching the limits of what we can call between the backbone and the ribs a bit much, because if we look, it's quite a bit much lower. And that too, on what you're talking about.
No, the ejaculate fluid does actually come from
the ejaculate fluid, but I'm talking about more so the semen, because the word for it used is khuluf, if I'm not wrong, and you can fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure that they're talking about semen in this context.
Well, I mean, technically, the whole ejaculate is a mixture of both the sperm and ejaculate fluid. So it says that when it comes, so the term in the Quran is used referring to the origins, the starting point of it, which is accurate. The starting point of it is between your backbone and your ribs.
Okay, sure. And the other point?
Well, actually, that's actually quite interesting, because the hadith actually says either between 40 to 42 days, the embryo becomes, the soul enters according to one opinion, and because it's based on the hadith, enters the body. What they actually see is that, and also gender determination as well, is also at 40 to 42 days. What was unknown at the time of Prophet Muhammad is that actually this does actually happen at 40 to 42 days. Gender differentiation begins at that point in time, where the gene that's in charge of testosterone is triggered strongly if it's a male, and not triggered if it's a female, because automatically all embryos will become automatically female unless testosterone intervenes and shunts it a different direction.
Exactly.
And that actually occurs at 40 to 42 days in the hadith, something that Prophet Muhammad didn't know, and the Greeks and also Jewish writings at the time, which is partly based on Greek thinking, actually got completely wrong. They said that that's determined at 80 days, women determined at 80 days, and boys a bit younger. So it's like, it's actually, how did he know?
But I'm talking more about, I'm not talking about the gender separation here, I'm talking more about the ears and the eyes. In the hadith I'm talking about, it says that till 42 days, the ears and the eyes start developing. They start developing at 42 days.
Well, I mean, you could say but we know the base. Yeah, I mean, they're not fully developed at that time, but the basis of the ears and eyes, yes, of course.
No, they start on day 22 of conception.
Sorry, what was the narration? Sorry, so the ears and the eyes start at
day 42 of conception. Yeah.
Well, I have to check that. To be honest, I actually haven't read that hadith before, but also single chain narration hadiths.
But take it a more generalized stance. What do you think?
Look, I want to just clarify something firstly. Is that you have Sahih narrations that say that the soul comes in after and then counting it 120 days, and another hadith, both Sahih, also Sahih, that says 42 days. Sahih hadiths, if something is Sahih, doesn't mean that we absolutely know for certain the Prophet Muhammad said it, because these two narrations about what the Prophet said seem to be contradictory. He couldn't have said both, he said either one or the other. So Sahih narrations are to be trusted unless we see evidence that contradicts otherwise. And so they're trusted that the Prophet said that, unless we see either another narration contradicted that's more stronger in some way, or we see mutawat narrations, which is from multiple chains, which are definitely guaranteed that the Prophet said this. We know he said it, and we never see any contradictions from mutawatir narrations to science, nor from the Quran. But as for Sahih narrations, there are ones that contradict each other. Basically, they're both Sahih and they contradict each other, because the point of Sahih narrations is we think, well, they are from a trusted source, but there's still the possibility of human error because they are single chain narration. So they will narrate under a single chain of people. Memory mistakes, error, human error. But multiple chain narrations, and the Quran was communicated by this, is where it wasn't communicated by one person who heard the Prophet, but multiple people were present, and they all communicated independently. And when we round all these hadiths together, we have a hadith that has multiple chains in it, and we see those hadiths. We've seen never any contradictions between science and those hadiths when we know it's for absolute certainty.
Okay, but to take a more generalized.
So I have to check that hadith because I haven't read. I'm not aware of that hadith you mentioned before.
That's not a problem. For Muslims, when they see a contradiction between science and the religion, or for any religion, what do you think our attitude towards such contradictions should be as Muslims? Do we discredit observation and science as soon as it contradicts with Islam, or what's our role of our observation?
No. So I would say, to use a scientific term, a falsifiability test. So is Islam falsifiable? And I'd say it is falsifiable. Not as in you can falsify it, as in it has a test. Okay?
Exactly. Yeah.
The Quran gives a falsifiability test. Contradiction. Okay? So, but we have to find a text that is definitive text. So it is qat'i. We know this text is one which this comes from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and from the Creator. So it will be the Quran and the mutawatir narrations. Now, if a clear-cut narration contradicts something that we can observe in the natural world, then that would falsify Islam. Yes, right. But it has to be something that's observable, right? And that has never been found ever. In fact, only continued confirmation of what the Quran has been with every new scientific discovery, archaeological discovery, and so on and so forth. Where the Bible said that at the time of Ibrahim, it was the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh actually, from archaeology, we know that term called Great House only came later on in history. And Islam, in the Quran, it talks about Malik, the king of Egypt, not Pharaoh, when Abraham encounters him, and then it's Pharaoh when Musa encounters him. So the Quran doesn't borrow the Bible's mistake if it was borrowing.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't borrow from the Bible, it is revelation from the Creator.
Okay, but what do you think the role of science and Islam is? Do you think that if tomorrow scientific discovery came that discredits something that the Quran previously proved, would that automatically discredit Islam for you or for Muslims?
What does scientific discovery mean? It means observation. So you're saying that if we see an observation of the physical world that contradicts something the Quran clear-cut says and intended literally.
Exactly.
Not like thing like sunset.
No, exactly.
Because we use the word sunset all the time.
But not something metaphorical.
But the sun doesn't technically set, right? It sets relative to us, and that's the use of the term, yes. Right? So if we see something that the Quran says that the Quran clearly intends to be literal, and it contradicts what we can observe of the natural world, then that would be a falsifiability test.
But you wouldn't say that then...
That would be falsified. But
what would you say about Muslims who say that that's a test from Allah also? That we're supposed to keep believing in the message even after our observation fails us?
No, because that would imply that the creative universe creates contradictions between his revelation and his other revelation, the universe, which is an ayat of Allah, right?
Yeah.
So he's not the God of contradictions.
Yeah. Okay. So most of the ideas in the Quran, most of the scientific ideas in the Quran, and you've also heard this argument before, undoubtedly, come from the Greek writings at the time that were present in the Prophet's time and oral traditions in that time. And we can see those oral traditions repeated in the Quran many times. What would you say about if there was a claim to be made that the Quran is copying certain scientific texts that were revealed at that time?
I'd say bring them and let's compare the Quran to it, and then look at the science, right? The Quran doesn't actually say exact same things as the Greek, a lot of the Greek theories out there at the time during the Prophet Muhammad, and in fact is more accurate. Hence, many Greek theories thought that. So they thought, for example, that the man, the boy, when created. Sorry, let me use an example. So one night recently we saw the one about the 40 days and thing. So the Greeks could see that at 40 days the fetus had started to have fingers and things like this. It started to differentiate itself. But although it was very small and whatever, they could start to see that these things happen, but only at a more later time. So for them, they speculated that gender begins much later. Or not at 40 days. Whereas, or some thought that maybe the gender is already completed at 40 days. Right? They had these wild speculations.
Exactly.
The Quran says it gets decided at 40 days. That's exactly accurate on it, right? So when people say, Greek theories, philosophy, okay, bring me.
So there are clear contradictions.
Because it doesn't seem to copy it verbatim.
Yeah.
And what the Quran does say actually is, because what those Greek theories, they're actually not accurate with scientific. But the Quran is accurate.
Is compatible with science.
Yeah.
So there's a clear line of differentiation between what was in those Greek writings and what we can see in the Quran.
Yeah, because the problem is when most people say, "Oh, it was taken from the Greek writings around," they won't quote it to you.
Yeah.
Because they haven't studied it themselves. One of my work, I actually read the Greek writings myself, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see that actually it doesn't match what the Quran says.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there are clear differentiations to be made between both texts. So my final closing statement here would be, what do you say to us Muslims and my age group specifically? What part of our Islamic journey should we attribute to our observation, and what part should we attribute to blind faith?
Oh, no blind faith.
No blind faith.
Everything must be. The thing is, I think what I would say is we need to check everything, right? If someone makes a claim, you check it, because many of these people that say, Islam got the idea of the splitting of the universe into from the cosmic egg, from Hindu, and it's like, well, that's not exactly what the Hindu philosophy actually says. Actually, I think it says the egg just basically starts out and expands, and that's the universe. But not the as in we're still the egg doesn't split apart. But with us, the Big Bang was energy went different directions. It didn't stay together. So again, it's never it's never an exact match to what the Quran is saying. Yet the Quran is a perfect match for what we observe from it's always a perfect match from scientific observation.
There's a very clear part of our observation that plays a part in our faith. And so if someone tells us that, faith is just blind faith, and
the Quran says, do you not see?
So you think that there's a complete 100%, there's a rational way, there's a logical way that you can come to the conclusion of God through Islam?
Oh yeah, of course.
That's great.
No, there shouldn't be any other way. But I want us to stipulate that whenever you hear claims, and I read tons of these claims, and I looked at the source text. Always go to the source text, and at the same time, understand firstly. When you read the Quran, make sure you don't assume the meaning that the Quran is saying. It's, the Quran must be talking about this. I just read the other day I was talking to someone. So the Quran has these the two Sieves, and they don't mix. And then they bring some picture from the internet of like these two colored Sieves that
exactly.
That must be what it's referring to.
Yeah.
And I was like, who told you that? It's not referring to that. Where'd you get that from? Okay. Then I looked into it and I say, well, what could it be referring to? Yeah, and it actually is the water. I mean, Allahu Alam knows best is revelation, but it seems a strong correlation, and of course this could be wrong. A strong correlation to how the fresh water table is underneath us. So underneath us there's a fresh water table. So there's a water
table.
A bigger underlying. There's water. There's fresh water, so it's not salted. From rivers. And from underneath us, and it comes out at a gradient, and then when it meets the ocean. Did you know, and please search it, never take my word for it, research it, that when fresh water mixes with salt water, it doesn't like fade in mix to it. It actually, there's a barrier. Now, yes, they mix, I mean, it goes out eventually, but there's a point where this is fresh water, this is salt water, and only at the barrier does it change. It doesn't slowly, gradually
so there's
mix.
A clear...
It doesn't slowly, gradually. And so the barrier, depending on how much water's coming from the river and the water table underneath us, sometimes it pushes out a bit, and sometimes it recedes, but the barrier is always there, right? And check it.
Yeah.
So people made an assumption about what the Quran was referring to, and they found some weird internet picture and so on. But I found when I actually looked into it, it's like, well, this seems like the best candidate. And the Quran is talking about fresh water and salt water. It actually says
in
fresh
the
water.
Context, in the context.
In the verse, it talks about this is fresh water and salt water. The Quran's telling you, right? So you made an assumption about it, but you didn't look at the actual science, what it actually said. And I actually found a really good concordance with what it was saying.
Exactly.
The ancients wouldn't be able to test freshwater and saltwater barriers. They wouldn't know, right? They would think if you dive into the water and you swim out of the river, you'd swim, you'd have the sensation that it's fresh and then it gradually gets salty. You wouldn't know there was actually a distinctive barrier where no, it's fresh water here and now it's salty.
Great.
Right? Yeah. So it's proven. So check it and also with Sahih hadiths, they're not qata'i, right? There's a possibility of human error. It's just that the narrators are known to be trustworthy, as in not liars,
Yeah.
and are known to have good memories, but they could still make mistakes in transmission and so on. That's why we have mutawatir narrations, we have ahad narrations as separate categories, and then within ahad we have grades of reliability. Sahih is the best grade, but it's not guaranteed, because we have Sahih narrations that contradict each other, like the embryology one, and then we have, which is Hasan, so Sahih, Hasan, and then it becomes Da'if, and then it goes all the way down to Mawdu, and like invented or fabricated.
Yeah.
So before you make a comparison between the observable universe and Islam, no, when I say Islam, like you say, oh, this single chain narration, this is from Allah definitely. Like, no, we don't know that.
Because it comes from human sources, you're saying.
Because it was handled by humans and it wasn't verified by multiple chains.
Sure.
You understand?
Sure.
So make sure you compare qata'i with qata'i.
Exactly.
What is certain in Islam, that this definitely comes from the Prophet Muhammad and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is definitely a scientific observation. The idea of the multiverse, the multiverse is a scientific theory, it's not an observation. There's zero evidence.
There's zero evidence.
There's as much evidence for the multiverse as there is for Zeus and Thor. So compare qata'i and qata'i, and it must be clear-cut and clear-cut. And if there's a contradiction, then you've disproved Islam. But if there is no contradiction, and Islam continually seems to be in concordance, and then is the only deen left that is in concordance with everything we see, then you must accept it.
Then you've got a pretty easy path ahead of you. In choosing Islam, of course.
If it's the only thing left, you know
yeah.
you know that Creator must have communicated to us, and this is the only communication that makes sense, is consistent, and agrees and explains everything around you. Everything that you've rationally concluded must be the case. Then this is the deen from that Allah had communicated to mankind.
Great. Thank you for being here,
Thank you so much.
And I'm very happy for me and the youth like me who are going to see this episode. And thank you for clearing up the role of observation in our path to the right deen. Thank you very much.
Barakallahu feek. Thank you for having me.